Let's just awesome. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this is our third edition of Seven Movements Workshop Series. We're here today with our good friend Jeff Thomlinson to talk a little bit about movement snacking and its impact on mental health and anxiety. Really interested to have this discussion. So the way we've been formatting these has been really to keep it pretty casual. So don't think you're going to get a PowerPoint presentation today because that's not going to happen. But what we like to do is bring in the experts like Jeff to have a conversation with our experts like John and talk about exercise and in this case, mental health and movement snacking. So John, come from a place that maybe someone is discovering us for the very first time watching this video. Give them an overview of seven movements, and then Jeff, I'll turn it to you to introduce yourself, how you connected with us, and we'll take it from there. So John, take it away with seven movements.
Cool. So, well, folks, my name is John Sinclair. I'm one of the co-founders, along with Dan, of Seven Movements. And we kind of started this company by accident, but purposefully to try and get people engaged in the beautiful art of moving a little bit throughout the day. And so how it kind of came to be was Dan presented me with a really interesting question one day while I was educating some personal trainers that Dan was a part of. And he said, "Hey, John, all the education that you're delivering is great." I think it was a sport performance workshop. And he said, "But how could I get more people involved in that don't go to the gym?" I was like, "Well, who do you have in mind?" He says, "Well, my grandma." I was like, "That's an interesting question." And my immediately thought, well, what does she love to do? And Dan's response says, "Well, she loves to garden, but we're never going to see her in the gym. Could we do something for her for gardening related to performance?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we take the approach of preparing her for gardening just like we might prepare a hockey player or a basketball player or a volleyball player?" And so Dan was just in his brilliance goes, "Well, how many movements do you think we should do?" And we're like, "Well, I don't know, seven." And seven movements came to be. And so we know that most of the people don't think of exercise the way us freaks think of it, right? Where it's, hey, let's go to the gym and spend an hour working out, or let's go play a sport and perform in a sport for a long period of time. Most people don't value exercise in that format, but they do things because of how they really love what they really love to do. And so Seven Movements was really born out of this idea of what if we could give you little bits of things you could do throughout the day to either offset the repetitive things that you do throughout the day, but also give it invite to exercise. Not a lot of people love to train really intense, but we do know the benefit of movement and how important it is for people to do little bits of movement throughout the day. So we started testing that theory, started building programming, started with a book called How to Keep You Gardening for Life and Seven Movements to Keep You Healthy and Pain-Free in the Office. And pretty soon it became this thing that we now know as Seven Movements, which is trying to expand into many different domains of the world of inviting people just to try a little bit of exercise a little bit at a time. And so we partner with really good, amazing professionals like Jeff to help us spread the word of how movement can help you in your everyday life. So that's a little bit about us, and we're going to dig a lot deeper into the idea of how microdosing movement or small little doses of movement throughout the day can improve you in many different domains. And I'll speak specifically about those domains a little bit later.
Cool. Thanks, John. Okay, Jeff, let's go over to you. And I think a good place to start here, since this is, this workshop's all about movement and movement snacking and its application to mental health and anxiety. Maybe let's get a little intro about who you are, and then why did you team up with us here at Seven Movements?
Yeah, thanks. Good to be with you all. And Dan and I met actually a while ago doing a fundraiser event, and I immediately was engaged with the conversation around the 80-20 rule, where I've always been that way as a teacher as well, where I'm trying to reach the larger population rather than, as John was just alluding to, the keeners, those that are already knowing everything and practicing and pretty proactive. so that got me engaged, and in my field, which has been yoga, meditation, yoga therapy for almost 40 years, and most recently, probably in the last 10 or 15, working with kids and school communities and different populations that really are part of that 80%. They don't have the tools, or they're not recognizing the tools of how to move beyond their stress or anxious responses. And for me, I learned the hard way. Kind of grew up in the 70s. I had a big loss in my life. I didn't really have any tools then. In my 20s, I started to figure some things out. Uh, and really breath and coming into the body, linking my body and my breath, were really transformational, repeated over time. And now it's kind of neat. The research and the data really shows that, small repeated pattern changes over time can replace in this case, the anxiety response in the body that I knew very well and that I moved beyond. It took time, but I did it, and kind of have that wisdom and experience now, and I'm using that in the what I'm offering in this program. So we're going to give a 12-week journey, kind of beyond the pattern response now to a new response for the future.
Cool, Jeff. I mean, tell me a little bit about practically what does that look like? Wait, when you talk about like movement snacking and its impact on anxiety, like what does that look like? What did it look like for you, maybe in your own experience? And then what does that look like from how you're looking at this from a programming point of view?
Well, I love that question. What comes to me is when I first dealt with panic attacks, I was a Xerox salesman many years ago. I was already doing yoga and handstands, and I was an A+ athlete and blah blah blah. But I was freaking out. Actually, it was not good, and I began to realize, okay, the tool I have with me all the time is my breath and my body. So driving my car, I learned to take a new response, shift the breath, and it took a couple months, but instead of the panic attack happening, I'd get a little pause, a couple seconds, then it would still happen. But over time, and I stayed with my breath and my attention, the pattern got repatterned longer and longer until I eventually the psyche said, "Oh, he's not going for it anymore," and I created a new pattern. So practically in these movement snacking, we're going to kind of do the same thing. We're going to do some little slow progressions where my two catchphrases are, breath starts the movement. Rather than try to move and then try to remember to breathe, the breath and the movement are together. And that really is a deep neuroscience repatterning. And then the other kind of overarching philosophy is replace the thinking mind with a breathing, feeling body. As pithy as that phrase is, it's very transformational. And that's kind of the goal of these small movement snacking. Will start to do those two things. The breath starts the movement, and then the thinking mind is replaced by the breathing, feeling body.
Very cool. John, like what comes to mind as you're hearing this from your, I guess, movement and exercise expert point of view? Not that Jeff isn't a movement and exercise expert as well, but just take it from your practical point of view as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So we all know that physical activity and movement is really important for our health, and it really improves, I like to think of there's four different domains of performance we're trying to improve on. Obviously physical, cognitive, social, and mental. And what's great is what permeates all four of them is breathing and movement, right? You can't separate the two of them. So the harder you work, the more you breathe. When we have periods of stress, exercise is a stress, but we also have different types of stress, right? If we get overwhelmed with that type of stress, whether it's physical or whether it's mental and emotional or social or cognitive, then that affects our health. And so what I love about what Jeff's saying is that all of it is integrated, right? So our performance will increase if I move more and if I'm in complete control of my breath. So your breath can help you regulate your nervous system, which is a direct response to the type of stress that you're under. So yeah, you can't separate the two. We like to do it this way where we only think of this or we only think of this and we try to silo things to make sense of it. but in reality, it's completely integrated, and you can't program without thinking of the two together. Like if I want to create a sympathetic drive because I've got to lift a really heavy load, I'm going to breathe in a certain pattern. If I need to relax and help myself recover from exercise or from a stressful environment, I have to use a certain pattern of breath to be able to deliver the outcome that I want, to decrease the sympathetic load and increase the parasympathetic response to it. So it's brilliant what Jeff's put together and how we can start to teach this as a craft for people, right? These are skills that we're trying to teach. And so that's what I love about the movement snacking approach or the microdosing approach, is that we can teach you how to do this in incremental ways, just like we're trying to teach you how to perform a particular movement for a particular sport. We start to learn these things in little bite-sized pieces until we actually develop a system around it, and your body recognizes like, this is just normal for me. And Jeff lived that, with his story. So
really cool. I mean, this is what's got me excited very recently about seven movements. Not that it wasn't exciting before, but very recently we've been putting together these programs and talking about the skill development component of this. And I think we've all experienced where we went to a workshop, or maybe it's 1 hour, maybe it's 3 hours, maybe it's a whole day event, and you're getting some training and you're taking a course and it feels good and you're motivated and you're like, oh, I'm learning some stuff. And then the experience about 2 weeks later where you're like, what did he say? Or what did she say? How did she say to do that? And what movement snacking allows us is daily practical application of all of those skills that you just start to develop over time. And now not only are you getting the immediate benefit of movement snacking, because you're just going to get like all the stuff Jeff's about to talk about what happens when you do a movement snack, but now you're building the skill that you can go back to that toolbox again without needing our app, without needing anything else. You've got the tool now because you've trained it enough. So Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about, like, as you started to think about building this program and progressing some people through, what were the skills you had in mind? Like what are you trying to help people develop through that 12-week period when they take your program?
Great question. And look, it's a 4. John, you'll like that. It's another 4, 4 quadrants. So the first few weeks-ish are about breath and movement, really, really solidifying the understanding of, breathe to move rather than move and remember to breathe. And even in popular, I'm not going to pick on all the social media out there, but so many things are they're such a visual reference for people that they try to emulate what someone else is doing, and they're often not breathing when they do it. There's a disconnect there. So very early on in the practice, the movements are very basic, almost too basic for some people, and that's actually really good. It's accessible for everybody, and it also gives them a chance to really slow down and hear the methodology of, okay, I'm going to breathe and let that inform the movement and build that. The second phase, second 3 weeks-ish, are really then beginning to recognize, what are the sensations, the feeling and the sensations in the body when I move or when I'm in a certain position, etc. Can I start to replace the thinking mind with the breathing, feeling body as a practical application? And that's in neuroscience, there's a lot there without going into that right now, but that's an important moment. There's plasticity there. If we can start to be with and allow and be present with what's there, there's a chance to change a pattern. The third week is it gets really now intricate into the anxiety responses, because in the feeling there could be feelings, meaning the body is a storehouse. The body mind is the whole field, right? So, you know, if your dad kicked the dog when you were 5 and it's always been a trauma for you, sorry, that's just the example I have in the moment, those are in the body. So as someone begins to use these tools, as simple as they might seem, using the body and the breath, they can start to allow and experience, oh, this is how anxiety shows up in my body. I now can feel and notice where it is. Then the final kind of section is really to address, almost specifically then, what are the times, what are the images, what is the archetype, the moment when I have a typical anxiety response. When is it going to show up? And then we actually we lean into it. We get close to it. We don't push through it, but we have the tool bag then to be able to go, okay, I'm here I am driving in the car to my Xerox sales call, and can I now use my tools to move beyond that response I had in the past? That's and then you graduate. By then you've you've come a long way. And I'll summarize a couple other points later, but those are the main four, you could say, methodology in play over the 12 weeks.
Love it.
Interesting. Yeah, I love that. And John, like when you hear this, like how does this fit within our programming? Like when, well, our program, this is our programming, but how does it fit with our existing programming? And where would you recommend someone go down sort of this program versus taking on one of our fitness-based programs with Viper Pro or something like that?
Yeah, it's great because we are completely integrated as a human being. So you can't separate the body, the mind, and the spirit. Like we're all as one. And yet, oftentimes, if you think of some of the pain related issues that people come to see me for, a lot of times that pain is a lot deeper than just the dysfunction at a particular joint, right? Like there's something a little bit more ingrained into that. And so what my initial thought would be, this is an amazing practice for everybody to be using, because if you can understand these principles, we all are going to be inundated with anxiety and stress no matter what. And it's not just about how poorly you performed on the pickleball court that day, right? It's literally our lives are inundated with stress, and having the tools to be able to deal with that is just going to make your life so much easier. And you understanding that sometimes how your body holds you back in movement can be just from the anxiety, stress that's coming from other areas of your life. So I think it's a really important practice that everybody goes through, right? Including myself. I need to be more in tune with the breath and understand that I can use that as a tool to help alleviate any issues that I have in my body, right? And so rather than immediately going to a physiological or musculoskeletal tool, I could use the breath as one just to lower the threat and then go into those strategies. So I think it's really important that everybody learns this if they feel like, yeah, I've never been taught any of this before. It might be a worthwhile opportunity to take advantage of it for sure. I know I will.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. And Jeff, you being sort of like a natural teacher, I know that you're the way you would form the curriculum of this would be very interesting, and how you would guide someone from sort of like beginner to the end of 12 weeks being like, okay, you've mastered this now, and you can put it into a practical application. Who do you have in mind when you were developing this, Jeff? I'm curious, like who is this built for? And we can say everybody should do it for sure. They should. But
Yeah.
who is the person that was rolling around in Jeff's mind as he was putting together this program? Was it the dog kicking truck driver you always talk about, or is it
You're gonna,
somebody else?
yes, it could be the dog kicking truck driver. Oh, I want to tell that story now, but I'm not going to. But suffice it to say, those that are, uh, uh, they're enmeshed in suffering, even pain, to John's point. And pain is physical pain and other pain, but they're in a reactive response. They're in a stress pattern, right? They're not in a current necessarily trauma response, although trauma is such a buzzword right now. I get it, why it is. But they're in a chronic stress response, and they really don't have the tools to move beyond that response. And often there's a lot of distracting or mis and disinformation out there where they're trying to um, they're trying to find a way out of their challenge, of their anxiety, with some practices that I'm going to say aren't integrated, right? They're separate. They're separate. It'll give a short-term response, right? It's like having a gin and tonic. I'm sorry. I'm just saying that, or something. There's some way out of the pain and suffering for a moment, but it's going to be right there. So it doesn't go anywhere. So one of my teachers said, wherever you go, there you are. So this is really built for that population. And again, I kind of hinted at this a moment ago. When I started the first series of recordings, they're very basic, like from a chair that someone can start, and they might stay in the chair for the whole 12 weeks. That's fine. That's not really the point. The point isn't the external form. It's really the internal posture, if you will, of how they're addressing their connection to their body and mind. Because I'll just also add, knowing anxiety as I do intimately, um, it's a very, it's, it, it, it keeps me unconnected to my body for sure. I want to go to my mind and I want to solve this. I want to get out of this. And the last thing an anxiety person typically wants to do is come back to breathing and feeling. But that's why we have to, that's snacking, these microdosing movements and breath is so key to be able to move beyond that. The example I give in the videos, I talk about anybody that's a snow skier knows the best way to, ski or board, you have to lean down the hill. The body doesn't want to lean down the hill. The body wants to lean away from the hill, right? But to really control and to move properly in skiing, you have to lean down the hill. So in the same way, we kind of have to gently lean into the anxiety, the typical body responses to make some change.
Amazing. I like that analogy a lot. So, John, like, where does movement fit into all this, and why is movement such a good catalyst for moving into breath and into dealing with the mind? Why do we start with movement, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, so at first, like I try to think of it in terms of like in school when we were studying sports psychology and looking at the psychological impact of performance. Do you remember the inverted U hypothesis of arousal?
Yeah.
So if you got your graph here and it's shaped like that, right? And right in the middle is where your arousal is kind of at your highest level of performance is when your arousal is kind of in the middle. And some people shift a little bit more. If they're more calm, they have a higher arousal. So it's not a perfect U, but it's maybe a sloped one, or some people need to get really fired up in order to perform really high. Part of it is just using movement to determine where your optimal performance state is, right? And so sometimes learning how to breathe along with movement will help identify where do you perform at your best, right? And so if we use sport as an example, as our example of movement, for me, I had to be just a little on the right of optimal, right? Like I needed to be a little bit more fired up. I couldn't be too relaxed or I wouldn't perform all that well. So I might use a certain style of breathing to match what I need to do for that particular activity. So I might do maybe some more percussive breathing, and that would push me a little bit more over the edge or get a little bit more fired up to where I need to be able to perform. Movement is great because you can match the movement to what you need to do to get to the arousal level. So if I'm maybe a little bit more right for performance and help lower some of that anxiety, I might choose an activity that is a little bit more aggressive in nature. It might be boxing, it might be jumping rope, it might be something that gets my heart rate up a little bit higher, right? That usually tends to get me more into an optimal level of performance. And then there's other people that need to do the opposite, right? Where they might choose a movement practice that just really helps calm them and get them back to their optimal level. So in a stressful situation, I tend to go for hard and fast, right? And that kind of helps balance me out in the after effect of when I'm done. It helps level me out and helps me think a little bit more clearly. So choosing the activity that helps drive where your performance is at, I think is really cool, and that you can select different movements. Whereas for Jeff, it might be yoga that helps lower his anxiety, right? So we can use purposeful movement prescription to help drive certain arousal states. And so what's cool is you have to learn these things about yourself and then try the different movement practices in order to determine, well, what outcome did I get when I was done that, right? We always say, like, you should feel better from moving than you did when you started, right? If you picked a movement strategy that made you feel even worse than you did when you started, that wasn't the right strategy for you in that moment. So part of it is about us practicing daily, but because of that daily practice, you'll learn more about yourself and what will help center you or bring you back to your homeostasis.
I love the self-awareness in that, like the self-awareness practice that
Yeah.
comes from that. I'll give you an example. What I was reading today on LinkedIn. As you all know, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, but I was part of a thread of a lot of like exercise professionals, and it was 100 and some comments deep of exercise professionals arguing what the optimal workout prescription and the ultimate exercise prescription for someone with a certain condition should have. And they were throwing studies back at each other and like just arguing about where no one stood back and asked, hey, like, wouldn't it be up to that individual who's
Yep.
self-aware enough to say, this is how I feel today, and this is how I'm going to use movement, or this is how I'm going to use breath to get to where to feel better, to your point, right? And I think we get lost in this industry a lot when we lose sight of that, which is why I'm so excited about Jeff's program as it relates to, yeah, it's framed around mental health and anxiety, sure, but it's a lot about self-awareness and practice and like learning that. So Jeff, I wanted to turn to you. So I don't know if you've ever met Beth. I think you maybe have. I see she's on the call. She works in a school district. So think about that. Let's take this, what you've built, and let's just apply it on the umbrella over teachers, right? High anxiety job. I lasted about a year in teaching because I couldn't take it. So you, when someone in, whether it be teachers, whether it be nurses, whether it just be general people experiencing anxiety, what's how should they go into your program? What should be the frame of mind? Is this like, I'm going in for a learning experience, I'm going in to get immediate relief from my anxiety? What should their frame of mind be? How would you set that up for somebody? Because I'm curious.
That's a great question to me. And hello, Beth. Um, what comes to me is I've taught in schools for about 10 years until COVID happened and I had to recreate some things. But it's funny, I was teaching at a local school. There's about 70 12th graders in the library lying down as I lead them through some of these breathing practices. And it's funny because as we were getting ready this one day, the teachers were standing by the door, like watching the group get ready to relax. And some of the students, two of the students said, well, they pointed to the teachers and said, well, you need this more than we do. Get over here. So it was really cute to see. Then the teachers came in and laid down, and quite honestly, they fell asleep within about 30 seconds because they're so exhausted as soon as they hit the floor. Uh, but to your question about who who and why would they use these tools? It kind of links into what John was hinting at too. I love the marriage between just movement in general and movement meaning a vast array of movements from pickleball to gardening to windsurfing. I don't know, or walking, or fill in the blank for the whole continuum of, I'm going to say, the 80% again, the population that aren't they haven't made the link between the body and the mind and the breath and spirit. I love that you said that too, John. That's in there. Um, so they're very connected. I said that before. They're disconnected. So I think to answer your question partially, Dan, is that they don't even really know what they're looking for to do. They just know that there's an intuitive sense, probably for themselves, that however they're doing it right now isn't working. Even though they're following the new Instagram plan or the something or the this or the that. And actually, in mental health in general, I don't know if you know this, but the data is there after these years of COVID. We're not really making a lot of progress right now. All of the dictates and the millions of dollars that are being spent, I'm going to just, my own little version of that is that it's not integrated yet. It becomes another thing that they're trying to accomplish or trying to emulate what someone else is doing or the book that they wrote or whatever. So really, what to summarize that, I would say I need someone to have an experience as much as I need them to have an education. Because experience in this way of replacing a thinking mind with a breathing, feeling body, and the breath starts the movement, these simple practices, and I laid out the four quadrants of the 12 weeks. Those are an experience, right? The experience becomes their teacher. And so I think, what I like is one of my friends used to say, there's a lot of suffering out there. Business is good. He was a meditation teacher. There's a lot of suffering out there, and there's a lot of opportunity to give, a new tool set, I'm going to say, that a lot of people might not even recognize yet.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm really excited about is sort of the integration of the mind and body, which needs to be integrated, like we've been talking about, right? And so, like John, when you hear Jeff kind of explain it that way, I get excited because it's like experiential learning. This is how people build skill while putting a new tool in their toolbox. Um, yeah, like talk about the skill development piece there, and then how that's going to apply to maybe a longer term movement strategy as well. Like it, move it into your domain. So hey, I've done this. I got all these new tools. Now I'm going to go work with a John Sinclair, and where does that set them up?
Yeah, so I want to piggyback on what you said, Dan, just a bit earlier about self-awareness. Self-awareness is the first mental skill that needs to be developed. So, give you an example. Most of the young people that come to see me that are high school or middle school that want to graduate and eventually play their sport and take their sport into college, one of the first things I ask them to do is to write me a little essay of who they are as an athlete, like who are you as a player? And then who are you as someone who's not on the field, pitch, or ice, right? Like, tell me what makes you you. And we do that because in a lot of cases, if they're a single sport athlete, which most kids are now, we have kids who identify as a baseball player, right? They don't identify as a kid that plays baseball, right? Or even into the professional world, right? We have people who, my good friend Dr. Brandon Marcello used to always say when he was consulting for the military, he says, we don't train and develop soldiers, we develop human beings that soldier, right? And that's a very important distinction, and very important distinction for people to know is that they need to be aware of what their identity is and what their occupation is, and they don't link their entire being into one thing. And so it's important to have that self-awareness. And I think movement can be an amazing tool to determine and to help reveal those things about themselves, right? Like there's something about baseball that makes you feel like, I love this game, or hockey, or gardening, right? There's something about it intuitively, and we often don't make that connection, right? And so part of breath work and developing mental skills is that the vehicle, in my belief, is that movement kind of drives a lot of that because it's an easy way for us to attach us interacting and integrating our environments in with our values and our virtues that are within us that help reveal who we are as people, right? I mean, it's hard to really reveal who you are if you're stagnant and never moving, right? And so while I think there are a lot of opportunities for us practitioners to be able to help people get better at moving, what's most impactful is that we give them something tangible that they can work on where that they can reveal that it within themselves. And that's why I think the daily practice of just connecting with a movement and trying to get better at that movement and then connecting the breath work with it now starts to help reveal like, yeah, my body now really likes this activity. One of the challenges one of the things that I'm always challenged with is when I see personal trainers or coaches banging their head against the wall trying to teach a particular activity, and you see that there is like no love in that activity for that person, right? And we see with parents that force kids to continue on in their sport because they've invested so much in it and the kids lost their passion for it. Or one of the things we used to teach, Dan, when we were at World Health is remember the exercises that they hate, right? Because if you can remember those, never teach them.
Yep.
Right? It's a real easy thing to do because if you're always teaching the deadlift and they absolutely hate to deadlift or they have a fear of deadlifting, don't teach it, right? Like find something else that drives them to want to be a little bit better. So that's where I think the daily practice of movement linked in with these particular skills that you learn not only help you with just developing the skill of self-awareness, but self-awareness, there's like 7 steps to it before you actually have self-actualization, right? All these steps of daily practice will take you through self-esteem, self-worth, self-acceptance, and eventually to self-actualization, which then, now that we know yourself, then we can get really specific with what your goals are. But too often in our industry, we start with goal setting. And it's like, that's 5 steps down the road. We don't even know who you are, right? Or you don't know who you are. So that's kind of how I approach the art of movement coaching with what do we do from the mental side of things.
Love that. That's really cool. Jeff, I'll let you respond to that. And then I've got a couple of questions kind of lined up for you. And then if Beth or Linda, if you have any questions at all for these two, drop them in the chat. And happy to get to them. But yeah, Jeff, why don't you quickly respond to that? And then I'd love for you to just to talk a little bit about the program itself. Like, how does it work?
Okay. Well, I'm gonna respond. Partially, my response will be speaking to how the program works a bit in terms of the yoga therapy foundations that I built many years ago, which are assess, adapt, and relate is the the 3 pillars. Sorry, it's not 4 of therapeutics, meaning assess. So each practice, each day that someone's practicing their 7 minutes, they actually start. They're queued up to invited to take a moment, say, how am I? Who am I? Where am I? Just no judgment. And that's even a practice in itself for a lot of people that struggle. There's a lot of judgment that can come in. So I'm kind of inviting that in the beginning to say, how am I doing? I'm arriving at my 7 minutes today. Okay, how am I? Like I'm shallow breathing. I'm feeling anxious. Like I'm worried about getting the car tires changed or something. Then adapt are the best practices. Those are the things I've already hinted at over the 12 weeks of, am I going to move to, breathe and move? Am I going to explore these simple movements? What am I doing there? What are the best practices that will evolve over the weeks? And people will have variations of their own. There's lots of empowerment and permission within the practices to stay with the philosophy, but also let the experience they're having physically in the movement be unique to them. It's almost like picking the right sport, John. And so assess, that's adapt. And then the relate is the end of the practice, which there's always an invitation at the end to fire off a quick text to, my best friend or my mom or sister or somebody, or write in a journal, right? Or have a journal ready to say, did my practice today? And that's really about accountability. So again, within the brain science, as we build a new neural pathway, that accountability also solidifies that. It's almost like having a gym partner, right? I'm going to show up at the gym. I did it. I was there. I give a high five on the way out the door, or as a fist bump now. So there's some way to use that accountability that helps solidify and build confidence, and also some there's that esteem, John. There's those foundational pieces like, okay, I did it. And no one's perfect either. That's, no one is ever going to get it perfectly right. I sure don't. But over time, there's momentum that happens within that assess, adapt, and relate. I'm practicing pausing, really. So when I assess, that's actually a form of there's that self-awareness, John, of that awareness pause to go like, how am I? Who am I? Because many people, just kind of go through the day with no self-awareness. They're in a reactive response the whole day. So this gives that a little proactive. They get a moment, pause, they do some practice for 7 minutes. They kind of reflect to go, hey, I did it. Good for me. And they move on.
Cool. I love that. So I see Linda dropped a question in the chat. So she's asking, how would I market this valuable training to the right audience? So I'd say a couple of things, and I'd love you guys to jump in on this as we start talking about the program itself. So the program's delivered as a daily practice. So you get a new video each day, and the intent is that you practice that up to 4 times a day. That's how you're going to get good at this stuff. And what I found is it fits in really nicely in two kind of ways. One, if you're working with a bunch of people on a semi-regular basis, whether you're delivering or you're seeing them at a certain cadence, this can provide an amazing daily supplement to what you're already teaching them. So maybe you're teaching a certain class, whether it be falls prevention or even a fitness class or whatever, and this could be a supplement that they're going to do daily in between their time that they're seeing you. And the best way to invite them to do that is to talk about the daily practice and the importance of this. And what's really interesting is you'll see their skill development, exponentially grow as they participate in your class. I like to tell the story of the Viper Pro program, John, that you developed. You can see the Viper Pros in John's screen, kind of to John's left, the little tubes there. I had those for years, and I took a workshop from Viper Pro on how to use them, and I sort of knew how to do it. But I'd say if I was to rate my competency from the skills, I'd say it was about a 2 out of 10, like working with that. I started using his movement snacking program for Viper Pro. I would argue I'm good 8 out of 10 now within about a month and a half of using that program. It's because I do it every day, and it's because I'm practicing those skills consistently. That will happen with whatever program that people jump into. So really excited about that. And then obviously the other piece that we're doing now at 7 Movements is people can direct people directly to 7 Movements. They'll get a consultation with one of our exercise professionals, myself, John, Jeff, and we're there to guide them into the right program, whether that be the program itself or the program with training. So that's kind of the opportunity that I see. Jeff, how would you market this to the right audience?
That's a great question. I'd always say I'm not necessarily the marketing expert, but I believe I would just build on what you said there in terms of somebody that's already doing some practice. It's like Atomic Habits by James Clear, a book that we all know and love. What is a daily practice that we can link this into that gives you some momentum and some success? And I think that's really key for people to recognize. They're so busy, it seems to be. People are so busy. There's really no space for anything, it seems, by a lot of people, or they're filling in that space a lot. That I think part of the sell of this is that it's this very short amount of time they have to commit, and yet the benefits of that short amount of time will exponentially grow, and success with the skill development, and it pays it forward in terms of their the fullness of their day, and the way they carry stress and anxiety is diminished simply by doing this daily practice. So that's really the sale, if you will, is that I was just talking to actually my daughter about this the other day. That's you know a physicist in university, very busy, very smart young woman, and yet less is more in terms of can we integrate a simple practice into her very full day, that the net is we get an overall shift in the anxiety. We talked about earlier, sympathetic and parasympathetic, the stress response or the relaxation response. There's an inherent relaxation response built in the success of the skills development and the success of this program.
Awesome. No, that's great. John, anything to add on sort of like how you'd introduce this maybe to the right audience? How would you go about it?
Yeah, I think marketing, again, is not certainly one of my strong suits, but what I do hear when people are talking is they'll tend to tell you stuff that they want to complain about, or things that aren't going so well, right? And so usually I'll often start off as, who do you know that is maybe struggling with some some anxiety or stress that they have at work. If you know somebody that's doing that, then this might be a cool strategy for them to employ to help, mitigate some of that stress. And so I always have my ears open as to, how people are feeling, how they're talking, how they're carrying themselves. And then upon deeper discussion, it's usually people just don't have the tools to be able to cope with all the stress that they have going on today. So that's where, as Jeff mentioned, it's a low barrier to entry. It's not a big complex thing that they have to take on. They're not, taking a week off of work to try to learn these skills. It's stuff that they can do in short little bouts throughout the day and get better at it as they go. And so that's the way I would kind of do it, is just listen to some of your clients who are struggling in some way, shape, or form, and recommend that they try this program, because the more skills you have, the more you have the ability to deal with some of this stress.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, John. I think we're at almost wrap up time, but Jeff, I wanted to give you an opportunity to touch on anything that maybe I missed in asking you any questions, and then John, I'll invite you to do the same.
Um, yeah, I think I'm just going to circle back to a note I had earlier about the amount of research and the progress that's been made in the last 20 or 30 years around pain. John probably knows this one really well too, about pain and how subjective pain is, right? On the 1 to 10 pain scale, someone's pain. And I'm talking about physical pain, but also, pain on the Holmes raw stress scale is relatively the same in terms of it's so unique to each individual. And so, how they report out pain is so unique, one. And then two, that just the message that comes out of that for me is how individual the approach to dealing with pain, suffering, stress needs to be for you. How to empower each individual to be part of their process. Again, rather than following some dictate from a new book or a new, social media influencer. I don't know what that's called, right? You know, that how do I empower that person to be part of the process and trust that and give them permission, permission to not do it perfectly, permission to, have it be something that they're committing to not as a willful practice, but as I'm going to say an organic discipline. So I love that distinction between, willful has its place for sure. If I'm lifting, if I'm bench pressing a new 225 as I want to go for, that's willful. That's different. That's a different breath. If I'm trying to change my anxiety pattern, I want to let it be organic. I want to let it, an intention, that develops over time. And that's really what I'm creating here.
Amazing. I think I'm really excited to see this program, Jeff, and it's going to be available on our platform within the next couple of days. Once Jeff and I get our act together. John, any final words from John Sinclair?
I love what you said there, Jeff. That really resonates with me. And the one thing that in all the years of trying to help people make some sort of physical transformation or performance improvement, I've found that, in order for anybody to really change, they have to be both willing and ready, right? And so if you don't have the skills, you'll never be ready and prepared to change. So that'd be the last thing that I would leave you with, is just that you need a skill set to be ready. And then when you're ready, you're probably more willing to make a change.
Love it. Love it. And I will add that, so the last 6 to 8 weeks, I've been interviewing 7 Movements users, our top users on our platform. And one of the most common things I heard from those users was they gave me some version of this: I feel neglected by, ignored, or not listened to by my healthcare provider in some way. And I think what we're talking about today really ties into that, in that people are so used to being told how they feel, they don't even know how they feel. And taking a program like this helps them develop that. And now they can go advocate for themselves in a new and unique way, and not just advocate within the health system, but advocate within the fitness space. And they're coming to a John Sinclair and saying, this is what I want to do next. I'm ready. To your point, John, I'm ready, and now I'm willing, and let's do this. So I'm really excited about this, Jeff. Thank you for putting this program together. Excited to have you a partner in Seven Movements, and excited to get you on the coaching roster and get you working with individuals within our community as well. And yeah, thanks for coming today.
My pleasure.
Awesome.
Thanks.
And thank you to Beth and Linda for showing up today, and joining us. Amazing to have you here. We hope to hear from you both soon. And always feel free to reach out to any one of the three people on your screen here. We're here for you. Awesome. Thanks, Beth. Thanks, Linda. Take care, everybody.
Take care.